Okay, we're back. So this has been a big day talking about big things, but we got two more videos to do today, and then we'll be done with week 4. So if you've survived this long, good job. I feel like it's going to be 2 of you that have watched this many videos, but we'll find out. Hopefully we get a good. Every time I teach a class, I always feel like there's like, you ever see movies where somebody's doing surgery and there's like a doctor doing surgery, and then there's doctors with him, and they're helping him do the surgery and handing him things, but then they have their own things to do during the surgery. But then there's people like up here in the window watching the surgery happen, and then there are people that are just having lunch across the street. And I feel like those are the 3 types of students. I feel like there's students who are working with me doing the thing, and those are obviously my favorite students. Then there are students who they're interested, they're watching the thing, but they're not really doing it themselves. They're just kind of watching from afar because they're not really sure. Like they don't necessarily feel like they have the skills to contribute. And by the way, you do. You can contribute. Come down here and help us do the surgery. But then there are people who are just like not doing this at all, and they're out. They probably didn't even get as far as the complicated sexual relationships of ancient Greece. They probably bailed a while ago. So now it's just us, the hardcore people, that made it this far. All right. So let's take a look at Socrates some more. I think this is interesting. I don't know. Somebody would yell at me and tell me this isn't any good, but I think I'm doing a great fucking job. All right, let's see what we got. Focus. All right, my camera's having a little bit of a weird problem right now. There we go. So we're here. Let us next see how his master, whose law of life is pleasure and not good, will keep and train the body of his servant. So this is the same thing we were talking about. People in love want the person they're in love with to be weak. Will he not choose a beloved who is delicate rather than sturdy and strong? One brought up in shady bowers and not in the bright sun? A stranger to manly exercise and the sweat of toil, accustomed only to soft and luxurious diet, instead of the hues of health, having the colors of paint and ornament and the rest of the piece? He's talking about makeup. Paint is makeup there, and ornament is jewelry. Such a life as anyone can imagine, in which I need not detail at length. But I may sum up all that I have to say in a word and pass on. Such a person in war or in any of the great crises of life will be the anxiety of his friends and also his lover, and certainly not the terror of his enemies, which nobody can deny. So he has a quick thing about how like the person's going to want you weak, and you're going to be useless in battle and war, and that's not good for society. And by the way, and this is a complicated subject, and Plato has another book where he says people in love would make great warriors because they'll want to impress the people they're in love with by doing well in war. And there's a famous phrase: "An army of lovers cannot be beaten," because each person wants to impress the other person. It's often, because it's referring to men having sex with men, it's often carried at the gay pride parade. You'll see somebody every year at the gay pride parade has a sign that says "An army of lovers cannot be beaten," Plato or Socrates or whatever. I don't know if it's Plato. It's not Socrates, it's Plato. He has another character who says that in a totally different book that I thought about teaching you and then decided not to teach you. I decided I would teach you this one. So anyway, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that. It's just a whole paragraph about how like people who are in love like people who have weak bodies because they're easier to control, but that's bad for you to have a weak body. And again, you may think about what heterosexual men like from women in terms of body types. And now let us tell what advantage or disadvantage the beloved will receive from the guardianship and society of the lover in the manner of his property. This is the next point to be considered. The lover will be the first to see what indeed will be sufficiently evident to all men, that he desires above all things to deprive his beloved of his dearest and best and holiest possessions, father, mother, kindred, friends, all of whom he thinks may be hinderers or reprovers of their most secret conversation, their getting together. He will even cast a jealous eye upon his gold and silver and other property, because these make him a less easy prey, and when caught, less manageable. Hence he is necessity displeased at his possession of them and rejoices at their loss. And he would like to see him wifeless, childless, homeless as well. And the longer the better, for the longer he is all this, the longer he will enjoy him. So he says, like, in terms of property, we're going faster now, by the way, because we've covered some of this already. But he says, in terms of property, you're going to want somebody that doesn't have a ton of money, because people that have money have power. It's one of the more fascinating details of some of the sort of sexual assault cases that have happened in recent years. I'm not good with names and I don't know anything about sports, but there was like a guy who owned a football team who got caught having sex with like someone in Florida, like in one of those like off the road masseuse parlors, that's staffed by immigrants. and people who like don't necessarily have all their papers. And a lot of people were like, I can't believe this super rich dude. He's not going to like high class, fancy, beautiful prostitutes and sex workers. He's going to like a massage place on like the side of the highway for sex workers. Like that's crazy. But and my own father was like, that's nuts. Why would he do that? But like he's the reason he's doing it. It's not because he's cheap or he can't afford it. It's that people who don't have money and people that don't have their like legal documents or whatever in America, they're weaker and they're easier to control and they're easier to silence and they're easier to do whatever you want to them. And it's nasty and it's bad. And Socrates totally knew this 2,500 years ago. I love it. I love Plato. I love Plato so much. I love it. Don't know. I don't agree with a lot of Plato, by the way, but I think it's interesting to think about. Uh, when a Christian gives you the Bible, it's because they agree with. They want you to read the Bible because it's the truth. I love Plato, but I'm not giving it to you because I think it's the truth. I'm giving it to you because I think it's interesting to think about. So I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on that. But Socrates says, again, if you want weak people, you're going to want people who are poor, who are easier to control. And he mentions here about how he cut you off from your mother and your father and your brothers. Classic abusive behavior. Sexually abusive people will make sure you're isolated. Why? Easier to control. You could do a whole paper in this area on sort of sexual harassment. And by the way, paper 3 is a topic of your choosing. So if you're interested in writing about sexual assault and sexual harassment using this passage from Plato, you could do paper 3 on that. It'd be real good. I would be interested in reading it. I think it's an interesting subject. I got these glasses and I'm really just like, I keep touching them. I feel like it makes me look smart. I'm, oh, look at me, I'm intelligent, I got glasses. All right. I haven't worn these in a while because I've been on COVID at home. All right, cool. There are some soft animals, such as flatterers, who are dangerous and mischievous enough, and yet nature has mingled a temporary pleasure and grace in their composition. Meaning people are beautiful, but they just tell you what you want to hear. You may say that a courtesan, that's a sex worker, is hurtful and disapprove of such creatures and their practices, yet for a time they are very pleasant. But the lover is not only hurtful to his love, he is also an extremely disagreeable companion. The old proverb says that birds of a feather flock together, meaning similar people like similar people. People like people who are similar to them. I suppose that a quality of years inclines them to the same pleasures, and similarly begets friendship. Yet you may have more than enough even of this, and verily, truly, constraint is always said to be grievous, right? People don't want to be controlled. Now the lover is not only unlike his beloved, but forces himself upon him, for he is old, and his love is young, and neither day nor night will leave him if he can help. Necessity and the sting of desire drive him on, and allure him with the pleasure which he receives from seeing, hearing, touching, perceiving him in every way. And therefore he is delighted to fasten upon him and minister to him. But what pleasure or consolation can the beloved be receiving all this time? Must he not feel the extremity of disgust when he looks at an old and shriveled face, and the remainder to match? Even a description is disagreeable and quite detestable when he is forced into daily contact with this lover. Moreover, he is jealously watched and guarded against everything and everybody, and has to hear misplaced and exaggerated praises of himself, censures equally inappropriate, which are intolerable when the man is sober, and besides being intolerable, are published all over the world in their indelicacy and weariness when he is drunk. So Socrates makes an interesting point here that, like, you can talk in a way, you can understand an older person wants to have sex with a younger person. You can definitely see what the older person gets out of it. The young person is beautiful. But what is the young person getting out of it? They have to look at this old, ugly face all the time. It reminds me, and I think we get in the handle on this. We don't need to spend all of our time on this, but it reminds me, it's a very common thing in sitcoms and movies where a kind of unattractive guy has a wife who is like mega hot, like absurdly good looking. And again, it's a sitcom kind of idea, where there's sort of a regular looking dude with like a very hot wife. Why? It's a power imbalance. It's because they're showing them off like a trophy, but it's like, what is it's designed to make you think about one person. Oh, isn't he lucky to have someone so good looking? But you don't think about the other person. What the hell are they getting out of being with this slob? And Socrates is asking the same questions about ancient Greek lovers that people have been asking about sitcoms and movies forever. And I would point you to any number of, and Woody Allen is doubly relevant here, but also Judd Apatow. I'm sure you don't need me. You can think of movies where there's a regular looking dude with a very, very good looking woman. So, all right, we'll talk about it in the last video of today.